Thompson Copsey, and welcome to Legal Futures webinar, Enforcing Landlords' Covenants. In today's rather strange new pandemic world, we have a situation where tenants, because of closures, because of shuttering of shops, because of isolation, because of quarantine, are unable to run their businesses. Increasingly, these businesses are being allowed to reopen, but in the meantime, the income that those tenants who've been running their businesses has dropped drastically. As a result of that drastic drop in tenant income, so the tenant's ability to pay its rent up to its landlord has also increasingly dropped. And as we saw from the March quarter of 2020 and the June quarter 2020, landlords recovering very little of the rent that tenants are obliged to pay. That, of course, has an impact on a landlord itself. And we've just seen the Into shopping centre go into administration in June of 2020 with a result that it is unable to, it is unable to properly service its debt. And that, in turn, is because of the rental drop, which was predicted from 490 odd million pounds, which the Into is entitled to something like 310 million pounds. Now, the shopping centres are actually run by special purpose vehicles rather than by Into that's gone into administration, so they are outside the insolvency process. But as SPVs, can they actually comply with the landlord's covenants, and particularly where they have a reduced income or no income? So whether you're talking about that type of landlord that is an SPV, where it's totally dependent on the income from the tenants, or whether you're talking about much smaller landlords who are also totally dependent on the income from the tenants, we can see that going forward, whilst we've concentrated very much on the tenant's inability to get income, going forward, a landlord's inability to recover its income, given all the restrictions on recoverability, on forfeiture for failure to pay rent, on the exercise of commercial rent arrears recovery, for example, we can see that although the rent is still due, a landlord's failure to actually be able to recover that income could lead to difficulties in the landlord complying with its covenants. And so in today's session, we're going to be looking at how to ensure that the landlord does comply with its covenants. How can you enforce those covenants? Now, we're going to be looking at something that doesn't sound like a covenant. It's where a landlord has to give consent. So in other words, if you want to assign or sublet, or you want to carry out alterations, or you want to change the use of the property, then very often you can do so as a tenant, but you need the landlord's prior written consent. We're going to look at when that is actually a duty, so effectively operates like a covenant, and when it isn't, and what it is you can do about the landlord's failure to comply with any duty that there is. We're going to be looking at landlords' repairing obligations, particularly pertinent in today's world. If service charge is not received by many landlords, then many landlords simply won't have, and we'll see this in a case called Blue Manchester, won't have the income out of which to pay the contractors for carrying out the landlord's repairing obligations, and as a result, the property might not be kept in repair. Clearly, if you're looking at standalone properties, then the tenant generally has the obligation to repair. But in multi-let buildings, whether you're talking about shopping centres, retail parks, or not quite a building